Hello, I'm Jack Blanchard.
And I'm Megan Messerly. It's Thursday, June 26th.
And this is the Playbook Podcast. Megan, you've done the whole week with me. Thank you so much.
Of course. It's been so wonderful being here with you.
It's been a real treat. We've been having far more fun than Dasha, who's been swanning around the Netherlands with the president.
Yeah. I mean, we've just been thriving in this heat here,
Right, totally,
just sweltering in swampy DC.
Swampy DC and sweltering in the heat of news as well. It's been an incredibly newsy month, frankly, hasn't it, honestly?
It really has.
Absolutely crazy. Things should be a little bit calmer today, he says. Fingers crossed. Can't believe I've dared say that.
Never say that. You will jinx it, Jack.
Totally. The first thing we're watching, driving the day today, President Donald Trump is back in DC this morning after his quick jaunt to the NATO Summit at The Hague. But he is going to continue banging the drum about his strikes on Iran from the weekend and making clear that he believes that whole thing was a triumph. And we're going to see a press conference this morning with the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and various people from the military who are going to come out at 8 o'clock this morning and make the case. So, Megan, you and I should get into all of that in just a minute as a sort of main theme that I think will be driving the day. A couple of other things to flag and that we can just discuss briefly before we get into that. The second one, of course, is the fallout from Tuesday night. It's amazing. New York City Democratic mayoral primary where the young socialist Democrat Zohran Mamdani swept aside the favourite, Andrew Cuomo. I mean, really trounced him, frankly, in that primary and is now very much the favourite to be the next mayor of New York City. 24 hours later, it feels like the Republican Party are sort of flexing their muscles now and sort of clicking their fingers and thinking that this is a real opportunity for us. Is that how you see it?
They are. I think they're sort of salivating over this opportunity. I mean, part of the challenge of Democrats being in disarray is there hasn't been a fun punching bag for them. You know, they've been forced to resort to their usuals like AOC and what have you. And so this is new, fresh fodder for the Republican Party as it figures out how it's going to define the Democratic Party headed into the midterm elections. But it's been truly fascinating to see how Republicans have seized on Mamdani's victory in the New York mayoral primary and using him as this archetype for these progressive socialist liberals, what have you. I had speculated they would immediately say, the Democrats, the socialists, you can't trust him. But the president, he used the word communist, right, in his post on Truth Social, taking it one step further. You got to up the ante when you call yourself a socialist.
Absolutely. And I suspect that was the first post of many that we will see from President Trump about this guy over the weeks, months, years ahead, assuming that he wins in November. I do wonder, though, sometimes outside candidates can come in and they can be a genuine breath of fresh air for their party. And yes, the other party always sees it as an opportunity when someone a bit different and a bit radical comes in as a prominent figure. But that hasn't always proven to be the case. And you could probably cite Donald Trump himself as an example of that in some ways. Having said that, the Democratic establishment leadership pretty nervous talking about this so far. You heard Schumer and co sort of tiptoeing around it a bit. Oh, it's a great campaign. Everyone keep praising the campaign rather than the guy himself, right? Really strikingly, because there's no doubting that he ran a great campaign. I mean, look at what he did in terms of the polls, but they don't want to be seen to be too closely associated with him, I feel.
No. I mean, I think we've already seen some distancing from some moderate Democrats in New York, right? There is some peril of being tied to Mamdani for more moderate Democrats. And you're exactly right. I mean, I think that's what we saw from top Democratic leaders is congratulating him, saying it was a great campaign. But you'll notice there was no racing to endorse him.
Right. They don't all want state-run grocery stores as the sort of big party platform, right?
Yes. Exactly.
Totally. The other nervousness I observed yesterday in the Democratic Party was in certain Democratic Congress people who might themselves face difficult primaries in the coming years and might themselves see a challenge from the left and might themselves be feeling a little bit nervous about whether they, as a sort of establishment centrist candidate, might face a similar tidal wave than the one that swept away Andrew Cuomo on Tuesday.
I think this is the perpetual problem of the primary, right? You have to worry about being attacked, in this case, from your left. There's always that peril. And so for someone who is not as far left as Mamdani, seeing this surge of support, seeing, young voters be really energized to come out and vote for him in a primary election, that I'm sure has a lot of Democrats on edge. At the same time, there's lessons to be learned here. The way he ran his campaign, the very modern sort of 2025 campaign, sort of a new tack for the Democratic Party. So I imagine even as some of them might be wary about where he sort of situated himself within the party, some of them I'm sure are also taking note.
While we're talking about Capitol Hill, we should mention that the Senate battle over what we're obliged to call the big, beautiful bill, because they've named it that, by the way. It's not us calling it that. They literally called it to make us in the media keep saying it, which is politics for you. Anyway, the Senate GOP battle over that is coming to a head. We're expecting votes through the weekend is the latest prediction. Interestingly, today, Megan, Donald Trump is going to be having an event in the White House where he's essentially going to be banging the drum for this bill. He's going to be promoting it very hard. What do we know about what he's going to say today about it?
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of being billed as the big, beautiful event, mimicking the big, beautiful bill language.
Right.
They're just really going hard into that language. But it's exactly what you said. This is really trying to rally the troops, get it across the finish line. The president has been involved to varying degrees in having conversations with senators over the last couple of weeks. Sort of looking at this, I think you can see a lot here in sort of the approach that the president took on the House side, right? Which is he has some thoughts about the legislation and the way he wants it to look. He's drawn certain lines when it comes to Medicaid and what he wants that to look like. But by and large, he's not a details guy. He doesn't, he's not going to get in the weeds of crafting the text of the bill. And this is what we saw him do in the House, right? He came in, he was the enforcer, he got everyone in line, and he got the bill across the finish line in the House when a lot of folks were highly skeptical. And so I see this event as really the beginning of that push, right? This crunch time, rally the troops, bring out folks who sort of demonstrate why this legislation is necessary, put that sort of political pressure on, and then Trump himself can start twisting the screws and getting those challenging votes across the finish line. But of course, nothing's done till it's done. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I've seen nothing from this Congress so far this year that suggests it's going to throw a real spanner in the works of anything this president wants to do, honestly. Let's talk about the main event. We saw Donald Trump at NATO yesterday, where he was supposed to be going to talk about, as we said, this great triumph and a genuine big achievement for the American president to have got Europe to commit to so much more defense spending than really any American president's done before. And yet he spent most of the time talking about Iran. It was a very long press conference. Most of it still seemed to be focused on Iran. And this leaked report has really got under the skin of the president and the White House, hasn't it? This leaked intelligence report, very early intelligence report, suggesting that it might be that the bombs that were dropped didn't do all of the damage that Trump wanted them to do. He has talked about this so much over the last 24 hours. The White House, everyone in the administration is talking about it so much all the time, pushing back so hard. Why do you think they are so riled about this story in particular when there's so many negative stories about them all the time?
I mean, I think there's a couple of reasons, but the one that jumps out to me is he wants to build this as a massive success. The United States came in and dropped these massive bombs that literally burrow into the earth. And he sees that as a show of American military might and strength in the world. And to suggest that it didn't go off as planned or was not as effective as the US had hoped would be to admit some kind of defeat, even if by the US's terms it was some sort of success, right? If it sort of falls short of those goals of significantly or nearly permanently setting back Iran's nuclear ambitions, the president sees that as a defeat. And he doesn't want that, right? To have who he sees as his foes in the media suggesting that this was anything short of an unqualified victory is exactly the kind of thing that would get under his skin.
And so the response to that, first of all, it's mainly been Trump and everyone associated with Trump just repeating endlessly again and again, we obliterated the target, as if you could just say it 1,000 times, people go, oh, okay, then you really did. Yeah, if you say it that many times. Obviously, they haven't provided any evidence for that at all. They're not obliged to, of course, either. But given all we've seen is some little holes above ground, it's not surprising that people are wondering how effective this very important military operation obviously was. But the second thing that they are now starting to do, and we saw this from Trump yesterday, and I'm pretty sure that this is what we're going to hear from Pete Hegseth and whoever he brings with him to this press conference this morning, is an attempt to say that just by asking the question or suggesting or reporting that, maybe these bombs didn't completely destroy this deeply buried target. You are somehow questioning, as he put it, the dignity of our great American pilots. You're somehow non-patriotic, even for suggesting that sometimes a really hard thing that they were trying to do and nobody was sure if it would work, didn't fully work. Just to say that is somehow attacking our great military, which is an interesting political framing, but one I think we're going to hear a lot of today.
It is, but it sort of tracks with the way that the president views the world, right? Things are very black and white. You're friend or foe, you're for us or you're against us. So again, any questioning that it was anything short of a unqualified success in his mind is a foe, right? That's just how he sees the world and how he groups people around him into friends and foes.
Absolutely. Although he should probably then put into that camp of people who've questioned it, one Donald J. Trump, who at a slightly unguarded moment in The Hague yesterday morning said, oh, well, the intelligence is inconclusive. It said it might have worked, it might not. I was like, oh, right. Yeah. So that whole thing you keep telling us about how it's definitely a success, how does that weigh up? They don't know. We don't know. No one's really sure at the moment. I mean, maybe, as we've said on this, it'll become clear over the long term. The other thing that's happening with it this afternoon is this delayed briefing for senators is going to happen over on the Hill with Hegseth and Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and others coming over to brief them about the mission essentially and how it went. Interesting story that broke yesterday that they're actually blaming this leak on Congress, and they're saying they're going to give Congress less intelligence in the future. I don't quite know what their sourcing is for that or how they've come to that conclusion, but it's, again, something else that's throwing a load of dust up in the air, as someone put it to me. It gives us something else to talk about rather than did the mission work or not.
We've seen this continued undermining of Congress and congressional authority and sidestepping them, right? And so to provide Congress with less information about military operations sort of is in line with that. There is mistrust there between the White House and Congress since his first term. And so I think what we're seeing is just an extension of that.
All right, we'll try and end the podcast on something a little bit lighter. I've had a look through the Playbook newsletter. The funnest thing that's happening today, I don't know if you call it fun or not, is the start of the Jeff Bezos wedding weekend. I don't know if you're across this, Megan, but this is like the wedding of the century if you like multi-billionaire people's weddings, which I guess some people do. And I was looking through the list. So Ivanka Trump is there with Jared Kushner, some sort of vaguely politically associated people like Oprah Winfrey, who sort of dabbles in politics a bit, is going. I just feel like a Jeff Bezos wedding is kind of a political event these days. The closeness between tech billionaires and politics now is almost started to merge together, right?
I think about this as the modern American version of the royal wedding, right? You know, it's something, It's a spectacle, something to watch. We don't have that here in the US. So this is what we get is Jeff Bezos on a yacht.
On a yacht in Venice, which is this sort of fantasy, like not really a real city anymore. I've never been to Venice, but it's basically like a theme park. It doesn't actually feel like a real place. So it looks like the perfect place for this particular couple to get married with all their odd, rich friends. And no doubt there'll be wall-to-wall coverage of it through the weekend. That's all we've got time for on today's Playbook podcast. We've got much more news and analysis in today's Playbook newsletter, which you can find at politico.com/playbook. That's it for me and Megan this week, but the podcast will be back tomorrow. Have a great Thursday, Megan. Thank you again for joining us all week.
It's been lovely being here with you this week, Jack.